This story came about from the long-standing desire of some of the crew members and writers on the show to do an episode that featured a mole machine, a sort of fantastical device that would give a little bit of a steampunk edge to an episode of Murdoch. But the inspiration for it, from my point of view, was my interest in the Hollow Earth theory itself, which is still held to this day by certain people, that in fact there are civilizations living under the Earth and that current-day alien sightings are actually inner-earthers who have built spaceships to explore the outer Earth. And when we looked into it, it turned out that a lot of people back in 1901 and around the turn of the century also believed in this theory, probably more than do today.
Today, I am here to tell you that life exists inside the hollows of the Earth. Below our very feet, creatures of an undiscovered race go about their daily lives.
Elva, because of the time period, she's very advanced and sort of ahead of the time. And so, given the circumstances, I think that she thinks she's onto something, and I think that it's plausible.
It was a hot topic amongst a certain set. The Hollow Earth theory was certainly not widely regarded.
For all we know, the mole people are a benevolent race. Now, that said, they might be absolutely monstrous.
There are rumors that John Quincy Adams believed in it. They're probably unfounded and were just concocted by his rivals to cast shame upon him. But it was a theory that a certain subset of the sort of conspiracy believers of the time did subscribe to.
Based on the evidence, I believe the tunnel was forged by a machine.
You expect me to believe that some local thief has built a machine capable of tunneling through the middle of the Earth?
Under the surface of the Earth, sir.
Bloody hell.
The digging machines that these guys have built from the art department on Murdoch are absolutely incredible. I had personally thought when I was writing this episode that we might see a little sliver of metal, a glint of a drill, perhaps a little portal, that they would build a little fragment of these machines. But there are two of them and they are absolutely incredible. Yeah, I'm surprised that they were able to build such magnificent machines.
When designing the machine that travels to the center of the Earth, we, of course, detailed the scripted notion of what it was and how it was supposed to behave, but ultimately, we kept it simple. We had an auger-like nose on it, encrusted in diamond dust, and it could penetrate any matter it encountered. And then we designed from the core, from the neck of the device, at the end of the auger, shaft-like tubes that would have suggested that it held some form of conveyor belts, and we added a slit that would give you that sensibility. At a glance, one would see that the design subliminally told you that there was matter being bore from the Earth that would probably go through these tubes that would be emitted in the rear and backfill itself, very much like a mole digging. Then we obviously did a little research, Jules Verne and all those wonderful gadgets that the Victorians were famous for in terms of their fantasy. Obviously that played the bass to the equation.
What we need is an accurate way to measure the vibrations.
You must have got some kind of thingy-majiggy for that, don't you, Murdoch?
I will soon.
One of the biggest things I had to research for this episode was seismography and the history of earthquakes and detecting movements under the Earth's crust. And one of the most interesting things is that the seismographs were relatively advanced by 1901. There had been some pretty intricate ones that had been built for centuries, but they still didn't really understand what made earthquakes. The idea of tectonic plates shifting under the Earth's crust was not something that was understood, held, or widely believed. So we have a little bit of fun with that in this episode, that Murdoch, the scientist who has many of the answers that nobody else really knows at the time, can't quite answer what causes earthquakes.
Sir, what exactly is this contraption designed to do? It's a seismograph, George, albeit a rudimentary one. You see, when there is a vibration, this pencil, which is attached to a pendulum, will accentuate that vibration, helping us to discern its intensity.
Seismographs had already been invented by the time Murdoch came onto the scene, but to sort of further the case, he puts out a network of them and decides to plot where the digging machine and where the under-earthers, possibly, are underneath the city of Toronto.
We always like to incorporate as much scientific stuff as we can for Murdoch to play with and use in solving his crimes, but at the same time, you can't spend too much time and not get too detailed. So sometimes you have to step away from the enormity of the calculation he might have to do in one scene and allow him to estimate or cut a couple of corners and do it a little quicker. So it's a fine line to walk, but one that I think the show does pretty well.